Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button not to miss any stories. My name is Daniel Jacks, and this is Flight 571. We ate our friends. On October 13, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, a Fairchild FH-227D, took off from Montevideo, Uruguay, carrying 45 passengers and crew members. The flight was chartered by the Old Christians Club, a rugby team from Montevideo, along with their friends and family as they were headed to Santiago, Chile, for a match against a Chilean team. The atmosphere was filled with excitement and camaraderie. The group was eager for the adventure that lay ahead. The aircraft was an older model but had been deemed airworthy. The passengers included players, their families, and several friends, all looking forward to an enjoyable weekend of rugby. Among them was the team captain, Marcelo Perez, who was well loved and respected by his teammates. As the plane ascended into the skies, the passengers settled in, chatting and laughing, unaware of the impending tragedy. As the flight progressed, the mood remained light. Passengers enjoyed snacks and drinks while engaged in lively conversations. The plane flew over the beautiful landscapes of South America, with mountains and valleys stretching below. However, the journey turned ominous as the flight entered the Andes mountain range. As they approached the Chilean border, the weather deteriorated. Heavy cloud cover and unexpected turbulence made navigation increasingly difficult for the pilots, Captain Julio Cesar Ferradas and co-pilot José Luis Sereni. The pilots attempted to communicate with air traffic control, but the worsening conditions complicated matters. At approximately 4 p.m., as the plane was making its descent, the pilots lost visual contact with the ground due to the thick clouds. The aircraft was flying blind, relying on instruments to navigate. Just moments later, disaster struck. The plane crashed into a remote, snow-covered peak in the Andes, approximately 12,000 feet above sea level. The impact was devastating. The fuselage broke apart, and debris was scattered over a wide area. Many passengers were killed instantly, while others sustained severe injuries. The survivors were left in shock, grappling with the horror of their situation. In the aftermath of the crash, a few passengers managed to gather their senses and assess the damage. Among the survivors were several members of the rugby team, including Marcelo Perez, who took charge of the situation. The initial chaos began to settle as the survivors realized they needed to work together to stay alive. They quickly searched for any supplies or equipment from the wreckage. Among the debris, they found some food, water, and a few essential items, but it was clear that they would need more to survive in the harsh conditions. As night fell, temperatures dropped drastically. The survivors huddled together for warmth, using the wreckage as shelter. The situation was dire. They were stranded in the mountains with little hope of rescue. Despite the gravity of their predicament, the group maintained a sense of determination and camaraderie. They knew they had to stick together if they were to have any chance of survival. The initial hope of rescue began to fade as days passed without any sign of help. The survivors realized that they were in a remote area far from civilization. The search efforts conducted by the Uruguayan Air Force were hampered by the rugged terrain and severe weather conditions. Rescue teams could not locate the crash site, and the survivors were left to fend for themselves. As the days turned into a week, the group rationed their limited food supply. They had to make tough decisions about how to allocate the meager resources they had. The cold and hunger tested their resolve, but they remained determined to survive. They continued to send out signals for help, using mirrors and fires to attract attention, but no one came. As the survivors faced the brutal conditions of the Andes, their situation grew increasingly desperate. With dwindling food supplies and no sign of rescue, they were forced to confront the grim reality of their circumstances. The survivors huddled together in the wreckage, the bitter cold seeping into their bones, each passing day a test of their physical and mental endurance. As hunger gnawed at their stomachs and the freezing temperatures took their toll, the group began to feel the weight of despair. The initial shock of the crash faded, replaced by the harsh, unrelenting struggle for survival. Days turned into weeks, and the meager rations, snacks found among the wreckage, were quickly consumed. With no food in sight, the conversations among the survivors shifted from hopes of rescue to grim discussions about their dire predicament. Whispers of cannibalism surfaced as a haunting possibility. It was a topic no one wanted to broach but could not ignore. One night, as the winds howled outside their makeshift shelter, the group gathered around a small fire. The flickering light cast eerie shadows on their gaunt faces. Their eyes darted to the bodies of those who had not survived the crash, lying motionless nearby. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air as they looked at one another, the silence thick with unspoken fears. Finally, Marcelo Perez, the team captain, broke the tension. "We need to survive," he said, his voice trembling. "We can't let their deaths be in vain." The others nodded, their expressions a mix of horror and understanding. They knew the reality of their situation. The laws of humanity were being tested in the cruel wilderness of the Andes. As the days wore on, the group made the harrowing decision to resort to cannibalism. It was a choice that would haunt them forever, but in their minds, it was a matter of life and death. They approached the bodies of their fallen friends with deep sorrow, aware that they were about to cross a line that would forever change them. In the dim light of their shelter, they carefully prepared to consume the flesh of those who had perished. The act was shrouded in a grim reverence. They spoke softly about their friends, recalling memories and sharing laughter, as if to honor them in their final act. The first bites were the most difficult, a mental battle as they fought against their instincts and the horror of what they were doing. The taste was foreign and metallic, a stark reminder of the fragility of life. Each time they consumed the flesh, it felt like a piece of their humanity slipped away. The survivors grappled with guilt and shame, their minds tormented by the act they were committing. They had become the very thing they once repulsed, a group of desperate men driven to the edge of morality in their fight for survival. As the days turned into weeks, their bodies began to weaken, but their resolve to survive only grew stronger. The harsh reality of their circumstances was now intertwined with the haunting memories of those they had lost. They shared the food sparingly, rationing the remains of their friends, each meal a reminder of the lives that had been cut short. As the days wore on, the survivors remained focused on their only hope: rescue. They continued to create makeshift signals, hoping that someone would see them. Despite the unbearable conditions, they found strength in each other. They shared stories, memories, and kept spirits alive as best they could. On the 10th day after the crash, a breakthrough occurred. A plane flew overhead, and the survivors frantically waved their arms, trying to capture its attention. The plane circled but did not land. The survivors felt a flicker of hope, but soon realized that it was not enough. They continued to wait, but rescue efforts remained elusive. As time passed, the mental and physical toll on the survivors became increasingly evident. Some began to lose hope, succumbing to despair, while others remained resolute in their determination to survive. The group had dwindled in numbers, and they mourned the loss of their friends. With each passing day, they faced not only the struggle for food, but also the psychological effects of isolation and trauma. They devised plans to search for food and water, making treacherous treks through the snow-covered mountains. The harsh environment continued to test their limits, and the journey was fraught with danger. After more than 2 weeks of survival, the group faced a critical decision. They could not wait indefinitely for rescue. They needed to act. A small group of survivors, including Marcelo Perez and 2 others, made the difficult choice to leave the crash site and search for help. Armed with makeshift tools and a map they had found, they set out into the wilderness, determined to find civilization. The journey was grueling and fraught with peril. The men navigated treacherous terrain, faced freezing temperatures, and battled hunger. Despite their challenges, they pressed on, fueled by the hope of finding help and bringing back rescue for their friends still at the crash site. As the group trekked deeper into the mountains, they encountered numerous obstacles. The cold weather, steep inclines, and deep snow made progress slow and arduous. They traveled for days, often going without food, relying on their dwindling supplies. Each step took them further from the crash site and closer to the possibility of rescue. During the journey, the men experienced moments of camaraderie, but also faced the harsh reality of their situation. They shared stories of their lives and families, drawing strength from their shared experiences. But as days turned into weeks, the toll of their ordeal began to weigh heavily on them. Finally, after a harrowing 10-day journey, the survivors stumbled upon a small village in Chile on December 20th, 1972. They were exhausted, malnourished, and on the brink of collapse. The villagers were shocked to see the emaciated men and quickly provided them with food, warmth, and medical care. The survivors recounted their harrowing tale, and the news spread quickly. Local authorities were notified, and a rescue mission was launched to locate the remaining survivors at the crash site. Helicopters were dispatched to search for the others, hoping to bring them back to safety. As the rescue teams arrived at the crash site, they discovered the remaining survivors. After enduring unimaginable hardships, they were found alive, but several had succumbed to the elements and starvation. The remaining survivors were airlifted to safety, and the tragic story of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 captured the attention of the world. The survivors were hailed as heroes for their resilience and determination to stay alive against all odds. Their story became a symbol of human endurance in the face of adversity, and they were forever changed by the experience. The crash of Flight 571 became a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of the human spirit. In the years that followed, the survivors of the crash were faced with the psychological scars of their ordeal. Many sought therapy and support to cope with the trauma of their experiences.